This is an updated episode and is audio only, available to listen on YouTube. 2 billion people. That's how many people live with something you've probably never heard of: hidden hunger. It's not about empty plates, it's about missing nutrients. Even when a person gets enough calories to survive, they may not get enough vitamins and minerals to prevent significant changes to human health.
I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sanku. It's a social enterprise working in Eastern Africa. These communities are at risk of malnutrition. And so we identify what are they eating every day. And we use that as essentially a vehicle. By adding vitamins and minerals to that food, we can improve their health, their immunity, literally save lives.
That's Felix Brooks-church, who along with his team at Sanku has found a way to take on hidden hunger at scale with the deceptively simple technology that could transform entire communities. Today we get a chance to revisit my chat with Felix from November 2022, followed by an update on what he's up to nowadays and whether he's come close to his ambitious goal to save 100 million people. I'm Alex Honnold, professional rock climber and founder of the Honnold Foundation, bringing you stories of inspiring people who are helping to solve today's most pressing conservation issues. In partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative, this is Planet Visionaries. Hi, Felix. Thanks for chatting with us today.
Hey, Alex. Thanks. Good to be here.
So what is your company and what do you do for work?
So my company is called Sanku. Essentially, we are addressing what's called hidden hunger. It's not starvation. It's people consuming enough food, but not consuming enough nutrients. So literally starving from the lack of vitamins and minerals that we need to survive, thrive, be healthy and strong. We've invented a machine that attaches to those small food producers, for example, a flour mill in a village. It automates the addition of these nutrients into that food, giving children, women of reproductive age, the entire population, essentially those key vitamins and nutrients, those basic human rights that we take for granted here in the quote unquote developed world. We're bringing that to the local level in those communities.
So how did you get interested in micronutrient deficiency? It's not an obvious track. How did you wind up on that track?
I've always wanted to get into work that gave back. And I think that I got that essentially from growing up all over the world and living in those communities and recognizing that privilege that I was given that others weren't and kind of giving back for that reason. And so I think it was 2006. I was aware of an opportunity to help a friend of my mother who opened this project in Cambodia. I moved out there for 4 months to volunteer. And I ended up staying 4 years. I just fell in love with the work, grew the project, working with 100 kids, working with the community, working with the government, working with the school systems. And so I got a kind of a taste and a touch of all these quote unquote development work opportunities. That's the first, I guess, introduction to malnutrition. Some of these children, a lot of the children that would come in, they would say they're 12 or 13 years old. They looked like they're 7 or 8 years old. There was a physical stunting to them because of the lack of nutrients that they had. So that's when I started to realize that I was getting to these children too late. Everything that we're doing, whether it was computer classes or English classes or general education, for me, it was a bit of a band-aid because not only was there physical stunting, but there was also cognitive development issues.
It's really interesting that you were working with the young kids and yet you still realized that they were already too old, that you had to start even younger.
You really do have to start at the beginning. Almost women of reproductive age, mothers before they have children, that's almost as early as you have to get to it. And the first 1,000 days of a child's life is so critical for good nutrition, for good development. It all really starts in that window. For me, I wanted to get to them again before it was not too late, but where you really have an opportunity to have a big impact. In those first 1,000 days, working with mothers, zinc, folic acid, all these great, really life improvers, health improvers that we all need. The majority of the population just doesn't have access to that basic human right.
Honestly, hearing you talk about the first 1,000 days kind of stresses me out because we have a 6-month-old right now. And I'm like, are we feeding her the right things? Is this, I don't know. We just had a baby and I'm like, I have no idea. We just started trying to give her solid foods which is pretty exciting. From like, oh, are they the right foods? Who knows? Like, oh, geez.
Yeah, exactly. Well, once you become a parent, you become obsessed with food, right? It's like so your one job, am I feeding my child the right things, enough of the right things? And it's funny that I fell into this work of nutrition and never never truly appreciated it until I had 2 children. Now we take zinc and vitamin A and B12 and iron, all these key things every single day we put in our children's food. And that's exactly what we're doing in the work that I do with my organization in East Africa. We're adding nutrients into staple foods that people eat, specifically maize flour.
Can you explain the stakes of malnutrition or hidden hunger? Like, how many people are affected by malnutrition, and what does that do exactly? I mean, I think because normally when we think about hunger, we just think about people literally starving. But what does that gray area in between look like?
Well, starvation obviously is a huge contributor to malnutrition. But when you're talking about numbers of people suffering from micronutrient deficiencies, it's 2 billion people globally. That starchy, basic maize or corn flour that the majority of people in East Africa eat because it's a robust plant that grows everywhere. Yes, it fills your belly, right? But you're still starving. That's why it's called hidden hunger, because you're starving from those nutrients. So low levels of iron, folic acid, B12, zinc, all these things means that there is physical stunting, there's cognitive development issues. A malnourished child, especially those first 1,000 days, has a weak immune system, very susceptible to preventable disease. Diarrhea is a big killer. Malaria is a big killer. So our work is super critical.
Can you explain what exactly you guys developed? Like, how does the device get built?
The device gets built by collaborating with really smart people. And so one very smart person is my co-founder and my partner, the chairman of Sanku board, David Dotson. First, I'll start with why we invented it. So whether you're in the US, Europe, where I am in Australia, you walk down any supermarket and the staple foods, the sugars, the oils, the flours, the salts, they've all been what you call fortified, meaning they've been strengthened literally with added nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. They've been fortified, and they've been fortified by law. The countries have passed laws to fortify these foods because it's so important that we get those extra nutrients. But in places like East Africa, the majority of the population doesn't buy these staple foods from supermarkets. They buy from local mills. So this industrialization and centralized food processing system that exists in the quote unquote developed world doesn't extend to the majority of the population in these communities. And these communities are arguably most at risk of malnutrition, of micronutrient deficiencies, right? And so what we did was, okay, how can we bring that proven science of industrial fortification, of adding nutrients to staple foods down to the village level? So we built a machine, just like these large mills have this large micro doser. We micro built that into something that was literally small enough to strap on the back of a bicycle, drive it to a local flour mill in a local village, strap it onto that mill, and it automates the addition of key nutrients in a powdered form. We add this powdered form of iron, folic acid, B12, zinc, again, the building blocks that we need. And then this machine now automates the addition of that into the staple food that everybody eats. Mothers come, they buy fortified flour, take it home, feed their children, they get the nutrients they need. Any of these nutrients that we do add to the flour, it's super important that it doesn't change the color, the look, the taste, the smell. It's basically invisible, right? And so whether you're eating fortified flour or unfortified flour, it tastes the same.
Can you explain the basic diet for folks living in Tanzania? Because I think for somebody like me who's grown up in, suburban US, I think of hunger as either not having access to food, or, you occasionally hear about food deserts in the US and things where you lack access to nutritious food. But, you really have to go somewhere like Tanzania, though, to experience what you're describing, where you're eating basically the same thing for every meal all the time.
The cash crop, it grows everywhere, is maize, corn, throughout East Africa, especially Tanzania. And then they grind it up into a powdered form, and then they boil it with water to create a porridge, and it's called ugali. And so it's basically like a polenta, I guess. That's the common thing I can equate it to. So they have a big bowl of this white ugali, which is a porridge that gets a bit stiff, and they use that to dip into other little sauces, or maybe they have a little bit of chicken or a little bit of veg on the side. But the vast majority of that plate is this massive ball of white ugali. Again, they're workers, that fills their belly. They get their carbohydrates, they get their energy, but they don't get a lot of other things, right? They don't get a lot of other nutrients. So what that does is obviously create this micronutrient deficiency.
Have people been receptive to the idea? Like, when you first brought your invention in Tanzania, were people into it? I mean, are the millers into it? Like, how easy is it to adopt this new technology?
Yeah, so USAID in Tanzania had gotten wind of our work and invited me to Tanzania back in 2012. And within a few months, was in front of the president of Tanzania. And I was showing him the machine and he thought it was pretty cool. And eventually at the end of our short conversation, which lasted probably 5 or 10 minutes, he said, "Can you put one of these machines in every village in Tanzania?" I said, "Yeah, of course I can." We definitely have lived up to that promise. We have 700 machines out there reaching 3 million people. The president has visited us again to kind of check in on us. So it's definitely moving in the right direction. Tanzania is a country of 60 million people, and probably 1/3 of those people is reachable, or definitely at risk that we should be reaching. So we're at 3 million right now, on our way to 20 million in the next couple of years. So definitely moving in the right direction. We're about to reach our 1,000th mil, feeding 3 million people. But yeah, our ultimate goal is 100 million people. We're confident we'll get there probably within the next 5 to 10 years.
That's amazing. Could you talk about how climate change is affecting your work, or how it's affecting, nutrition more broadly?
I'm seeing firsthand the effects of climate change in East Africa. Maize is always seasonal, so you have your harvest once or maybe twice a year. But I've seen scarcities definitely recently where it's just not available, and the limited maize that is available is too costly. The other thing that climate change affects is it not only makes less abundant crops, but it makes less nutritious crops. And so when you're thinking about these smallholder farmers, they're relying on not only producing these crops to sell, but also to consume. Now they have less, and now they're able to sell less as well. So they have less income. And now they're making tough choices between purchasing more nutritious foods versus non-nutritious foods, or sending their daughter to school versus their son to school. So there's this kind of trickle down effect of climate change to malnutrition, to economic status, to development entirely.
So have you managed to connect with any of the other Rolex laureates?
We have had some initial discussions, for example, with one of the laureates, Hindu Amuro Ibrahim. She works in Chad. She has a mapping project, basically mapping out communities, water sources, livestock, and all these things. And in these areas, there are also local mills that produce this staple food. So there's definitely an opportunity for our solution to come to Chad to bring this basic human right to these communities that require it. One of the other laureates is actually from Nepal as well.
Is the Nepalese laureate Rinzin Fuzak Lama?
Yes, exactly.
Because I spoke to him recently. Yeah.
He's awesome.
And I mean, I could see how the projects could certainly go together. Yeah, I mean, he's working in the most remote corners of Nepal. It's like, surely there's an opportunity for fortification there.
Well, yeah. I mean, the more remote you get, likely you're going to have micronutrient deficiencies, right? There's going to be less access to the colorful things on your plate through just being so remote. So our work belongs, unfortunately, everywhere. There's an opportunity to help.
What are your hopes for the work?
Our vision is to guarantee that every meal consumed by every mother and child contains these life-saving nutrients. And beyond that, we see us enabling these millers to deliver a basic human right. And that's what really gets me excited. It gets me passionate about this work, is that there are basic human rights that we should have: light, shelter, food, in our case, nutritious food. And yet 2 billion people do not have access to that. So not only are we bringing better food to these communities, enabling them to grow up healthy and smart, but we're really ensuring a basic human right. I want to get thousands of machines out there. I want to reach hundreds of millions of people with fortified flour. But also, and this is what's so great about partnering with somebody like Rolex, I want to get this story out there. I want everybody to know. And this opportunity speaking to you today is to be able to get the word out about this issue, about this solution, tell the story about why this is happening, get people involved, or get people at least educated around this issue.
So what advice would you give to the average person on how they can help keep the planet perpetual?
Through knowledge, knowing what the issues are to reduce your carbon footprint, whether it's through recycling, whether it's through volunteering, whether it's whatever it might be. But there are ways to get involved. There are ways to educate yourselves. Get involved, educate yourself, and definitely support organizations like ours and others.
Well, that was my conversation with Felix Brooks-church back in November 2022. That was when Sanku had reached about 4 million people. Recently, I heard that figure had risen to a staggering 25 million plus people. I wanted to find out more, so here is my recent chat with Felix for an update. Hi, Felix. Good to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm good. Great to see you again. I think it's been 3 years.
Yeah, fill me in. What's happened in 3 years?
Yeah, we've kind of stepped on the gas since we last spoke, added a couple new countries and millions more people, and guaranteeing really nutritious food as a basic human right. And food fortification is a very common thing. It's decades long in what's called the global north.
Yeah, that's actually something that I'd like to put a finer point on, because I feel like listeners might not realize the fact that almost everything that they eat is fortified to some extent.
Large companies and any food producers in the global north must fortify their products because there is a micronutrient gap in everybody's diet. And especially if you're, let's say, a woman of reproductive age or, pregnant, you should be taking folate. These key nutrients are standard where we live and we take it for granted. But these core foods, they're called staple foods because whether it's salt, whether it's flour, whether it's even sugar, edible oil, name a dish that you don't use one of those ingredients or all those ingredients. Pasta, for example, it's made of flour and that's fortified. So when you think about your typical meals throughout the week, it's hard to identify something that hasn't been fortified in that. And so we are getting those nutrients. So when you talk about that as a basic human right, and then you go to communities where we work in Eastern Africa, where those foods, those staple foods, those same ingredients, because anywhere in the world, any dish in the world, you're going to be using those key staple foods. If they're not fortified, then people have a micronutrient gap. And a micronutrient gap, especially for a child in the first 1,000 days or a woman of reproductive age, could be catastrophic. It could be the difference between life and death, and definitely the difference between a good life and a bad life as far as cognitive development, strong immune systems, and a country as a whole. So it is a very important thing. It's not spoken about enough. The consequences of hidden hunger equates to about 8,000 kids dying every single day. So this is a huge problem, but because it's hidden hunger, it's not starvation. It's kind of not really, in my opinion, discussed enough. But it's very much a solvable issue, and that's exactly what we're doing. It's
like both a very mundane problem and a very mundane solution, yet so potentially impactful. I mean, how do you talk about that?
Last time we talked, we were reaching about 4 million people. This is back in 2022. And now we just closed last month, reaching 25 million people.
Oh, wow.
We've added, when we talked, we were in Tanzania. Now we've added Kenya, we've added Ethiopia. We're looking at Rwanda. We have a legitimate chance to reach 100 million people by 2028, and maybe 200 million people by 2030. So where are we going? We're going across the region as far as countries and scaling up and reducing our cost and becoming sustainable. So, I don't see myself doing much other than this for definitely the next 10 years.
What are the biggest impediments to scaling that quickly? Because this is one of those things where you're like, clearly this is the correct thing. This is a good idea. It works. It saves lives. It helps people. Like, why isn't this deployed faster? Why don't more people do it? Like, why aren't there competitors doing the same thing at scale? Like, what slows this down?
There's a couple challenges, working with governments in the region. Each government is different. There are certain barriers there. The level of buy-in and understanding of this solution varies, the acceptance of it. And so there's a lot of bureaucracy and MOUs you have to sign with different ministries. And that just takes time. And the speed in which a government works is very different than a social enterprise kind of startup mentality, right? We're innovative, we take risks.
Yeah, totally.
Governments is kind of, they're like, this is how we've always done it, and this is the speed in which we'll always do it. And so that can be a bit of a frustration and a bit of a barrier.
Is that super personally frustrating when you know that the solution will eventually be implemented? You know it's the correct thing. You know that in 5 or 10 years this will be the standard. Everyone will do this. And you're kind of like, why not just do this now and save 5 years of needless suffering? Like, how do you personally get past the frustration at those delays when you know that something is important and should be done immediately? You're like, let's just do this.
Yeah. Well, I've learned to become a little bit zen about it. I used to get frustrated in the early days, but I realized if I continue that frustration of things not moving at my pace, I would just be burnt out. And it's also, we are guests in these countries, so it's not up to me to move in and say this is how you should be doing it. We when we move into a country, first of all, we want to be invited. We want the government to invite us. That avoids a lot of the barriers around trying to convince them how important this is and put in mandates and laws and systems around that. If those things are already set up and established, it makes our job a lot easier.
Now, as far as competition, there is competition. There are other companies working mainly with the larger mills, selling these nutrients. Because there is not strong enforcement of imported goods in some of these countries, unfortunately, there are a lot of products that are counterfeit. There are a lot of nutrients that might not have the right levels or the right quality or any nutrients at all in these, what's called a premix. So I would say, obviously, our competition is malnutrition, but our second competition is companies that sell counterfeit products at very low costs. And that's hard to do. That's hard to compete with sustainably. And so we do a lot of work with the government to build better, robust regulatory systems to stop at the border the entry of these products and definitely stop them being used at the mill.
Can you talk about any technical changes in the device, in the dosifier over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, well, just to describe the device so the audience knows, what I'm talking about. Again, it's called the dosifier. It's about this big, or maybe the size of, less than a meter. It attaches to mills. It does the automated job of adding the nutrients. And so it consists of some weights, sensors that weighs the grain. As the grain flows into the actual mill, it detects that loss of weight and then tells a feed screw to dose out these powdered nutrients. So very simple, right? The only thing that we've added since we last talked is we've improved on the way that machine reports to us. We installed SIM cards into that machine, so it connects to this nearest cell tower and streams real-time data to us. How much flour is being produced, how much nutrients are being added, if there's any motor jams, if it's overheating. And we also put in a sensor, a laser in what's called the premix hopper that holds the nutrients, to bounce off the top of the powder as it goes down to detect the level and the usage of that actual powder. And when I say laser, it's like that optical laser you'll have on your garage door that if you pass, it'll stop and not bang your head. We're not talking about lasers shooting to the moon, but it is still a laser, which is kind of cool. So I would say, the big thing is, working with IoT, the SIM card, the laser to detect, actual usage, and streaming to our dashboards. We use Power BI, which is basically, it shows us graphs and real-time data so that we can make decisions, better service the mills, calculate how many people we're reaching, and just be literally smart as an organization.
What's the biggest change that you see through these upgrades?
It would definitely be around if a machine breaks or if a machine is not calibrated correctly, right? That's the thing we care about most. We don't have a mission unless there's nutrients in flour. And we don't have a mission either if there's not the correct nutrients in the flour. So the biggest thing is in real time, we want to make sure that flour being produced is accurate. And if it's accurate, then the science takes over and those health impacts will happen. But it's also a great monitoring tool for us to know how many people we're reaching and in which areas. We care about saturation. We want to make sure that people are consuming fortified flour, the right amounts, consistently as well, not just on a Monday and then a Friday, like every day. So we get to, do cool graphs and heat maps to see, how many people are reaching in which areas. And then we have a health nutrition calculator that we can punch in those numbers and make assumptions on reductions of neural tube defects, or stunting or maternal deaths and things like that. We want to know, I want to know definitely, that what we're giving our lives to as far as work has a positive outcome, has meaning, has purpose.
Mm-hmm. How is the support from the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative supported your work?
They've been amazing. So obviously, this is a lifelong journey with them. I'm a laureate, and that's something really, really to be proud about. I met the team about a year ago, and I went to Geneva and I said, listen, I've got this crazy idea. I want to scale to Ethiopia, but it's very risky. It's been a big challenge to fundraise for. And there's high rates of malnutrition, and it's kind of risky. And would you like to help me out? And they didn't really blink. And they said, here you go. And they gave us a grant. And that allowed us to scale into Ethiopia. And we started really stepping on the gas about 6 months ago. And because of that support from Rolex, we're now reaching 4 million people in Ethiopia. And we've proven that we can operate there. Because of that initial support and that pilot project, we've attracted more donors.
And we have a legitimate chance to scale up to reach about 40 million people in Ethiopia. Ethiopia existed an opportunity where there was zero fortification. They've just passed a law. And again, the statistics are heartbreaking. And so I think it was an opportunity that they couldn't pass on. And it was a partnership that they were confident could make this work.
And it seems like you're making it work, huh?
It's working. It's working. You know, we have a great local team there. I go out there, you know, at least once every month or two. It's a big country, 130 million people. And there's about 40 million people that consume wheat flour, which we're fortifying right now. So yeah, no, I'm excited to see where this goes. That's our third country, and our fourth country should be coming up in the next year. Maybe we talk in a couple of years and we're reaching 100 million people.
I can't wait. So Felix, thank you so much for taking the time. It's a real pleasure to catch up, and I'm looking forward to hearing where your work is in another 3 to 5 years. How many more countries you guys are working in?
Awesome, Alex. Thanks so much. Really looking forward to talking to you in a couple of years.
That was Felix Brooks-church. Huge thanks to him for his time. We will put links to Sanku in the show notes for this episode. Planet Visionaries is a podcast in partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative and a Sony Music podcast production.